Plays crazy, plays big.
Good luck, guys.
Hey, what's up guys? I'm Pokerface Ash and welcome to my channel. I am back from a month-long grind in Vegas and I hope you guys enjoyed the few vlogs that I did there while I was grinding and trying to win some tournaments, and it was a blast. So tonight I'm on my way to play a home game. It's a 2-3,000 max buy-in. It plays crazy, plays big. I'm excited to get in there and play some hands and of course give you guys some vlog hands. So let's go play this home game and I'll see you guys there. In one of the very first hands of the night, there's an under the gun straddle to $10. It folds around to me in the cutoff and I look down at ace-9 offsuit. Definitely can raise this one up here and attack the dead money, especially the random hand in the straddle, so I raise to $30. The straddler defends and the flop is 10-9-5 with 2 diamonds. He checks and I decide to bet $45 on a 10 high board with a lot of draws available. He makes the call. The turn is the king of clubs. He checks it over to me. I think I can continue barreling here, but I did decide to check and we head to a river card, which is the deuce of diamonds. He checks again. I do have the ace of diamonds in my hand. I was hoping he'd try to stab at the pot if he missed on the river, but our hand is good enough to win here a decent amount of the time, and at this point we don't want to turn it into a bluff. If I was going to bet another street for value, I would have bet the turn. So I check and I expect to win a ton of the time here, but he ends up flipping over the same hand, so on our very first pot here at the home game, chop it up. Okay, so this home game was full of a lot of my friends and players that I've seen play quite a bit. One of them, though, that I hadn't seen play but seemed like a pretty competent player, his name was Andrew, and in this hand, he raises the low jack to $15. I'm in the big blind and look down at jack 10 offsuit. I defend, so we go heads up to a flop. The flop is queen 9-4 with 2 diamonds, so we flop an open ender. I check, and to my surprise, he checks back. I was expecting to see a bet here a lot of the time from this particular player, but we move on to the turn. The turn is a queen. I have jack high with equity as we are drawing to the nut straight. This hand is a great candidate to start barreling, especially since my opponent checked the flop, so I start betting and make it $20. He makes the call. The river is another 4, so now the board is double paired. I should have all the advantage here. My opponent is highly unlikely to check back a queen on the flop. I have way more 4s than him. The only 4 he realistically should have here is an ace-4 suited combination. And since I bet the turn, I can start leading there with all my queens, so I definitely have the advantage in this spot. I was contemplating on a bet size. I came to the conclusion of betting $45, which is about 70% pot. I felt like this was a good size if I do have a queen or a 4. While sure I can overbet some of the time, and after reviewing the hand later, I thought I was making a mistake with my bet size, but I actually played the hand quote-unquote perfectly based on what GTO wants to do, and against this player I do need to be somewhat balanced. So all that being said, I bet 45 and he goes into the tank and ends up hero calling with ace king. I really like my line here, and given the way I used to play in the past, this is a spot I would just check fold and give up, so I'm happy to see that I'm taking the more aggressive routes. And even though I like my bet, I think against this particular player, after seeing him play a lot more hands, he does not like to fold, so I definitely should have bet over pot here, but at the time I didn't have this information available, but now we do, so let's move forward. In this hand, stacks are about 800 effective. Under the gun 2 raises to 15. I look down at ace-king offsuit in middle position and I raise to $50. My friend Carlos, who always loves to make the vlog, he raises the button to $150. My friend Garrett is in the small blind and he thinks for a while and then counts out his stack and then decides to go all in for just about $600. This is a really interesting spot because I know Carlos plays pretty tight, but I know he also is aware of table dynamics and my image and what I'm capable of as well. Garrett's jam here looks a lot like ace king, queens, possibly jacks, trying to isolate all the dead money in there. I think my best play here is to re-jam and get Carlos off of a lot of hands that he might 4-bet there, and knowing his tight image, I think he'll fold everything except aces or kings. So here's where things get interesting. Carlos says he folds and then folds ace-king offsuit face up, and now my heart just sinks because there goes 2 of my outs. Garrett flips over his hand and then asks how many times I want to run it, and since I just saw Carlos' hand, I'm gonna ask for twice and hopefully we can hit one of our outs. And here's what happened.
Hated to see your hand go into the muck.
Garrett's all in? Oh! Let's go. Oh, it's 2 boards? 2 boards. Oh.
Deuce!
Oh my god. Oh no.
Alright.
Oh,
So pretty anticlimactic there. I wish I wouldn't have seen Carlos's ace-king go into the muck, and I would have just run it one time and would have scooped a massive pot, but instead, we chop it up. Alright, so in this crazy, loose, splashy home game, the $10 button straddle was on almost the entire time. It effectively lowers the amount of big blinds you have in your stack, so your stacks get shallower as the blinds increase with the button straddle. So in this hand, there's a button straddle to $10 and I'm next to act in the small blind and look down at king, queen of clubs. I really hate being in this position. Being out of position sucks, especially the worst spot on the table, which is a small blind, and theoretically from this position I should be raising a bit bigger, but in this case I raised to $40. The hijack, cutoff, and button call. The flop is 3, 4, 7 with 2 clubs, so we flop the second nut flush draw. I like to lead with some of my worst flush draws and check call or check raise some of my best flush draws, so in this case I'm happy to check and keep more people in the pot because we have a pretty strong draw. It checks around to the button. He finally takes a look at his cards after calling dark on his straddle. He bets $75. I make the call. The rest of them fold, so we head heads up to a turn card, which is an offsuit ace. I check and he checks. I think he has a very weak holding at this point, probably a pair plus gut shot, straight draw hand, something like that. The river is an offsuit king, so we don't hit our flush, but we hit a pair of kings. We have a great bluff catcher here. I can bet per value, but this particular player is very capable of making some insane bluffs and plays, and I don't want to be put in a tough spot out of position, so I check it over and hope to induce a bet from him. Unfortunately, he checks it back, so I flip over my hand. He mucks, claiming he had 5-3 offsuit for a pair plus a gutter, and we scoop a very nice pot in this straddled hand. This hand, there's a raise in early position and a caller. I look down at deja vu, king, queen of clubs yet again, and this time I get to 3-bet. I chose the sizing of $60. Over half the table calls me. Some players flatted the 3-bet out of position and in position. Either way, we went 5 ways to a flop of 4, 5, 6. And even though I 3-bet, I do not have any type of range advantage on this board. Players could have flopped straights, sets, 2 pairs, and I would be lighting money on fire to c-bet this board. So if you're watching out there and you're a beginning player, rec player, do not c-bet on boards like this. You're gonna get raised a ton of the time. Even if you have aces, kings, queens, ace, king, hands like that, this board is a pure check, especially 5 ways to a flop. There's a bet and a fold, and I fold as well, and we move on to the next one. This hand was a bit speculative, where there's another button straddle to $10, and once again, I'm in the small blind. I look down at ace-jack offsuit. I think this might even be a fold, but haven't been able to play too many hands. I want to get in the mix, so I raise to $40. Early position and the cutoff call, the button folds, so we go 3 ways to a flop. Flop is just about as dry as it gets. It's queen, 6, deuce, rainbow. I'm out of position against 2 players, but I do have range advantage. I do have the aggressional advantage, and I'm up against 2 opponents that just called my raise pre-flop, so they should be pretty wide here, especially the way the table was playing. So there's about $140 in the middle. Don't need to bet big here into 2 opponents. It already looks strong enough as it is. I put out a bet of $40, planning on betting pot on the turn and overbetting the river if I get called, because they just cannot hang on with most of their holdings here. They're going to fold out every single hand except for a nutted hand, and unless they flopped a set, there's really no hands that can continue that are strong enough to face max aggression. But luckily for us, we don't have to do that because they both fold, and we pick up a pretty nice pot here once again with the button straddle in effect. In this hand, I'm in the cutoff and raised to $20 with king queen offsuit. My friend Kyrie 3-bets the button to $60. Even though I'm out of position against Kyrie and his range, I think King Queen offsuit is okay to call here, so I put in the extra 40 and we head to a flop of 10-8-7 with 2 spades. Depending on what I think Kyrie's 3-bet construction is, this might be a better flop for me than him overall. I'm out of position, so the standard thing here is to check it over to him. He bets $20. I do have the queen of spades, I do have some backdoor straight draw possibilities, and my overcards possibly are good, so I make the call. The turn is a pretty great card to continue in this hand. It is an offsuit jack. I check, he bets $45. Now after picking up this open ender, I'm not going anywhere, so I make the call. The river is an interesting card. It's an offsuit queen, but now there's a 4-liner to a straight. I check and he checks back. I flip over my hand, expecting to win a ton of the time. He flips his cards up a little bit so I can see him, and he showed ace-jack offsuit, so I did get there against him, but I will take it. In this hand, there's a raise from Andrew under the gun to $15, a caller in between us, and I'm on the button and look down at ace-king offsuit. Definitely want to keep the pressure on here and put in a 3-bet, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger since there's some extra money in there, so I make it $75. Andrew, who's under the gun, puts in the 4-bet to $230. Being on the button, having position, facing a 4-bet with ace-king against this particular player, I'm not going to fold just yet, so I make the call. The flop is 10-8-5 with 2 hearts. He leads into me and continues for $140. I'm not going to fold just yet to a down bet with ace-king, so I put in the call and we head to a turn card, which is another 10. It's the 10 of spades, so now there's a double flush draw out there, and I do have the king of spades in my hand, which matters somewhat. This is where it gets a bit interesting. He's out of position, the top card pairs the board, and he decides to lead into me yet again for I think about $340. I'm not sure because I forgot to write it down. Either way, this pot is huge, and I forgot to mention we are about 1,500 effective to start the hand, so we were fairly deep. After thinking about the hand after the fact, this bet just does not make sense. When the top card pairs, he should be checking almost every single hand he has. I don't block hearts, so he certainly can have ace-king of hearts here, possibly even ace-queen of spades if he's putting in a 4-bet out of position with that type of hand. I'm not sure if he should continue barreling on this card, so when he leads again, it seems very, very fishy. Unfortunately, I have the one hand in my range that can't continue. I'm going to obviously continue with queens, jacks, kings, possibly if I decide to call with kings in position. I might even decide to call with aces in position here too. If I was going to continue in the hand, I think I would have to shove. I don't think there's any hand here besides a 10 that can snap me off, so might have been a good play, but again, stacks were really deep and I didn't feel like punting here, so I decided to put in the fold, and he shows ace-queen offsuit, so he did get me a little bit in this hand. It was just pretty unfortunate I couldn't continue in the hand, and if I had the ace of spades, I might have played this hand a bit differently, but it is what it is, and we'll move on to the next one. Alright guys, you're about to witness one of the biggest pots I've ever played, and ironically enough, it's in a PLO double board bomb pot, and ironically yet again, it's also against the villain of the night, which is Andrew. So because I usually steer clear of these hands, I wasn't even filming it because I was getting a massage and I honestly didn't think I'd be playing a huge hand, but I get dealt king, queen, queen, 9, and the first board is queen, ace, 7, and the second board is king, 3, deuce. Unless someone has aces, I'm good on the first board and have middle set. Someone puts out a pot bet of $80 and I decide to make the call, and if someone else raised, I was gonna repot, but I make the call for 80, another player calls the 80, and Andrew calls the 80, so we're going 4 ways to a turn card. The turn on the top board is an 8, and the turn on the bottom board is the case queen, so now I have middle set on both boards, no straights, no flushes. This is an absolute dream spot. It checks over to Andrew and he pots it for around $300. Everyone else folds and now it's back on me. There is a flush draw available now on the second board and it's time to get all the money in. I don't want any cards to come on the river that might discourage him from putting more money in the pot, and I have middle set on both boards. Let's get all the money in. So I shove for about $1,200, which effectively puts him all in for the rest of his chips if he makes the call. He tanks thinks and tanks for a very, very long time. Rightfully so, he has a tough decision. He's wondering if he's good on one board, but I know after him tanking, he is probably drawing near dead. After a lot of contemplation, he's like, I don't think I can fold this, I call, and he flips over a set of 7s on the top board, and on the bottom board, I don't think he had much, so I scoop an absolute monster pot here in one of our very last hands of this crazy action home game that I had an absolute blast in. In the very last hand I played for the night, I looked down at the beautiful 8-9 of diamonds under the gun. Next to at calls and the big blind calls, we go 3 ways to a flop of 4, 5, 7 with 2 diamonds, so we flop ourselves a backdoor flush draw, 2 overs, and a gut shot to the nut straight. I think this is a good enough reason as I could ever have to put in a bet here, but for some reason I decided to check. I'm not quite sure what I was thinking. The turn is an offsuit jack, and now it gives me a double gutter, which is essentially like an open-ender. Any 6 and any 10 gives me a straight. The big blind bets $20, and now I make the call. The other player folds, so now we go heads up to a river, which is an offsuit king. He checks. I think he's really wide stabbing there. I don't think he has a very strong hand to make the call. I have 9 high and have no other choice, so I put in a bet of $65. He folds pretty quickly, so we get away with one after not playing the hand very well. I think I should have started with a bet. Either way, on our last pot of the night, we take down a W, and we're ending the session with a really great win. So after being stuck at the very beginning of the session, I was in the game for $2,000 and I cashed out with $2,715 for a profit of $715. And if you're wondering what I use to track my sessions, I use Poker Analytics. Check the link in my description to download the app. It's available for Apple and Android. It's an amazing app that is very easy to use but also can give you great stats and insights on your sessions. It's also imperative and very important if you're going to take poker seriously that you track your sessions so you know what your hourly rate is and how you're doing. If you guys enjoyed the vlog, would you do me a huge favor and go all in and like, comment, and subscribe? It would mean the world to me. Remember, we're just getting started and it's only up from here, and stay tuned for next week. I have one of the biggest, if not the biggest, announcement I've ever made in my life. Stay tuned.